Hi everyone, I'm going to continue the series of the great famous Sephardi Rabbanim, and we're in Yemen today. One of the greatest rabbis, one of the greatest rabbis from Yemen territory was a great Chacham of the name Rabbi Yicḥyah Kapach, who is very, very well known among all the Yemenite Jews, among many Sephardi Jews, among many of the Jews across there. Was born actually back in the English year 1850 and passed away in 1931. It's his Hilula this week, here on Yud Aleph Kislev, the 11th of Kislev, and much can be said about him. There's different ways, first of all, of pronouncing his family name. Some people, it will be pronounced as Qafiḥ in English, or Qafiḥ with a Q over there, but be it as it may, he was a very great rabbi. He would at one stage actually be the chief rabbi in Yemen, in an area called Sana'a over there. So he actually spent, so to start with an introduction, he was one of the foremost rabbinical scholars in this area called Sana'a during a long period of time, and he was one that he did advocate for some reforms in Jewish education over there, which I will expound on. He was also learned very much in astronomy also, and in metaphysical science of rabbinic astrology, and was also very well versed in Jewish classical literature, which he taught to many of his students for the next generation. Let's just say, as I will move on, because he had a lot of respect in secular society. Okay, so just to give an introduction and an overview about the great Chacham. He was actually raised by his grandfather, because unfortunately at a young age he was orphaned by both his father and mother. He was probably around 6 years old, it was reported, over, and studied Torah under auspices of Chacham Rabbi Chaim Korach over there. He was actually his deceased mother's nephew. Later he studied under another prominent rabbi also of Yemen called Rabbi Yicḥyah Yosef al-Kareh, I hope I pronounced it correctly, from whom he received rabbinic, let's say, some sort of a great ordination. He also learned shechita under that, so he was able to become like a professional shochet. We're talking about around the year 1870, so he was still in just after his teenage years, or around that time period. He only later on in the year 1899, it was reported over, he would actually serve as the chief rabbi of Yemen. It was only for a year, but he was a prominent member throughout the time period of the rabbinic court in Sana'a until his death, even, which would be 30 years plus later on from there. And he was also he was serving at the time inside the Bet Din with the chief jurist and rabbis, another great Chacham of the name Rabbi Yicḥyah Kapach. Remember, many of these great Yemenite rabbis also had a first name Yexia, just like Chacham Yicḥyah Kapach did. And many responses, he was very writing a lot of responses with a lot of different great rabbis, also including a rabbi, the famous Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cook, also, who I've done a video about, I'll expound on. And in the late 19th century, he was a host to the Austrian Arabist and archaeologist, someone of the name Eduard Glaser, who conducted research in Yemen. And at the turn of the 20th century, he conned a correspondence with the chief rabbis of Ottoman Palestine in Jaffa. And what's interesting is, as I stated about Rabbi Cook, Abraham Isaac Cook, later took on his role in an official capacity in 1921, in which he and his fellow jurists answered 26 questions posed to the court of Sana'a, which Chacham Yicḥyah Kapach would have been involved with. Other interesting things which I must say about him: Rabbi Qafiḥ actually served as one of the chief instructors in the city's largest seat of learning, inside the yeshiva over there. He had a very, very prominent role. He held then in the synagogue known as, there was a synagogue over there in Yemen called the Beit Saleh, which was Saleh was a common name there, until unfortunately a famine broke out in the year 1905, resulting from a war with the Ottoman Turks, which forced the closure of this yeshiva in the spring of 1906. Rabbi Yicḥyah Kapach was confirmed by the ruling monarch from the ruling monarch at the time as one of the 4 representatives of the Jewish community in Sana'a, which was also very prominent and brought along a lot of responsibility with it in this Jewish community over there. One of the 4 representatives, along with another, I'll mention the other people, some of the other great people, with Huran al-Kohen, Yeh Yitzchak Halevi, and Yeh Abyad. I hope I pronounced that also correctly. So what's interesting is there was a document that outlined the obligations of the Jewish community towards the Muslim state, and let's just say the poll tax over there assessed against every male 13 years of over. In the year 1909, 3 years later, he became the headmaster of Jewish school that was built by Ottoman Turks in Sana'a. The school actually was called Al-Maktab, and he initiated in Jewish education over there a lot of reforms over there. One thing I'll expound about, he would later on question the use of the great amount of time spent on Kabbalah. That's something I will also expound on later on, where he will actually start some sort of new movement that would go on for generations also. So he became the headmaster of the school and brought around different reforms in the education, which I would believe at the time maybe some people would have contested. For example, he taught arithmetic and geography alongside the Torah, and employing Turkish teachers in the school for teaching the Turkish language to the Jewish youth at the time, which might have, in the early 20th century, might have been seen maybe by some as something like of a step towards something different at the time, which some people will argue which wasn't necessarily good. But one thing that I believe was questionable with regards to this change at the time was, which was expounded on from different rabbis. This was actually raised from the last chief rabbi of Yemen, Rabbi Amram Korach, was that by teaching the Turkish language, obviously, the study of Hebrew suffered, because naturally, if you're going to teach one language, the other language will be, let's say, subtracted from. So seeing that the Jewish youth had less time to fully acclimate themselves to the rules of Hebrew grammar and to the fineness of the language. So obviously, teaching Turkish would actually subtract from that. And remember, many people, even nowadays, would say that the closest is Hebrew pronunciation, so what it was maybe at Har Sinai, is actual Yemenite pronunciations, which many people would say, but maybe this might have, let's say, cooled down the accuracy, but probably not also. So that is just something of a 2 cents of mine. And also, within regards to Zohar was being studied for a significant period of time in these areas, in the Yemenite area. So he tried to he questioned, he started questioning, should this be taught the whole time, Kabbalah or the Zohar? Maybe we should go back to a different derech within regards to limud at the time, let's just say, for example. And he created at this time the Dor De'ah movement in Orthodox Judaism, which was to counter the influence of, let's just say, the Lurianic Kabbalah. And he tried to bring a more rational approach within regards to Judaism, such as, let's say, for example, is represented by the thoughts of Maimonides and Rav Saadia Gaon, another great rabbi. And he encourages strict adherence to halacha as formulated inside the Mishnah Torah. But what's interesting was that the innovations and textual readings enacted by Rabbi Kapach in his Bet Midrash there was some sort of contestment from the Sana'a Jewish community at that point in time within regards to should he have taken this approach or not. And I very much recommend the people to research about this, as a lot has been documented about this, and I won't expound too much on it in this year, but it's something that led to a huge movement, and something I expounded a bit on, because he had a very great rabbi was his grandson, Rabbi Yicḥyah Kapach. I also did a video on, and his Hilula also some months back. So I'll try and expound a bit more on that. He, let's just going back to Rabbi Yicḥyah Kapach, who was his grandson later on. He actually spoke within regards to, he very much also advocated within regards to this movement also. And to go on, he spoke a lot about the Zohar and Kabbalah, that maybe this shouldn't be necessarily the approach that is being taught in the Yemenite countries. Okay, so just to go on more, and I'll talk about one of the works for which Rabbi Kapach is most well known for is a colossal work called the Milhamot Hashem, which is, let's just say, the wars of Hashem, let's just say. And what's interesting, he began writing this in English in 1914 and was published in Jerusalem later on in about the year 1930. It's 1931, just before he passed away, I believe. And in this book, he actually argues that the Zohar might not necessarily have been totally authentic, and attributing its authorship to, he questioned whether it was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that actually authored this, but I would very much recommend people to also research about this book, also about the origins about it. He had a lot of great students, also Rabbi Kapach did. I'll name a few of them, was including one of the most famous disciples was a great rabbi of the name, the Mor Yicḥyah Bayad. I hope I would pronounce that correctly, who would actually later on in the years 1932 to 1934 would serve as a chief rabbi of Yemen after the death of Rabbi Yicḥyah Halevi. This was. And other great students that were included at the time was Rabbi Yosef Ba'aron Amar Halevi, who actually lived from the year 1911 to 1988, not so longer, 35 years ago passed away, and rose to acclaim in the land of Israel for having punctuated the entire Babylonian Talmud in the traditional manner in which words were pronounced in Sana'a, inside where the place of in Yemen, where Rabbi Yicḥyah Kapach also was from. Also, and this work actually took 20 years. Also, and another great student he had was the name Rabbi Yisrael Yeshayahu, who was a member of the Israeli Parliament actually in the year 1951 in the Knesset in Israel, who also actually was a co-editor of historical books in Israel also. So that's very interesting. He had a lot of great students also and left a lot of legacies. One of the legacies he does leave is that he retrieved the world's he did a lot of research. He looked at the old Geniza, in the old Sanan area, and he was able to retrieve the world's oldest complete Mishnah commentary, which is very interesting. And this was, I believe, in the year 1927. This was only about 4 or 5 years before he passed away. And his grandson, also Rabbi Yosef Kapach, also published works in his memory later on. Obviously after he had passed away. It's interesting. Published, corrected, and translated version of texts, including all of Maimonides' Jewish works based on the centuries-old manuscripts, rescued and preserved by his grandfather, by Rabbi Yicḥyah Kapach, was actually restored from the great Rabbi Yosef Kapach, who lived later on. So I would very much recommend everyone to do a lot of research upon Rabbi Yicḥyah Kapach. And remember, I think there was a big documentary which featuring the great Rabbi Mezuz, who is a prominent rabbi in Bnei Brak, was done, I think, around the year 2000, within regards to Rabbi Yicḥyah Kapach, within regards to Rabbi Yosef Kapach. It featured very much about their bibliography and within regards to the movement they actually had in Yemen. So very much recommend everyone to research more about him. It's his Hilula here on Yud Aleph Kislev, naturally 2 weeks before Hanukkah starts, the Festival of Light. And please watch over the previous videos in this great series within regards to the great Oriental Rabbonim. Rabbi Yicḥyah Kapach lived around 81 years before passing away, from 1850 to 1931. So please have a great day, and please watch the rest of the videos and share it and click like on the videos also.